Good morning, Rabbi Isai. Daf Memvov Amud Aleph. So we learned in the Mishnah that there are certain things that you cannot do pigel to. Those are things that don't have a matter. They are the last stop. For instance, the kmitza or the blood. Yet the Mishnah says those things that do not have pigel, they still have noisar and tuma. You can still be over to Yisur besides dam. Blood doesn't have noisar and tuma. Says the Gemara, 2 lines from the top of Memvov Amud Aleph. Chutz min adam. How do you know that when it comes to the dam, there is noisar and tuma? When it comes to the dam, the Torah says, this is the pasuk by dam. I gave it to you. The blood is yours. In other words, you're not taking away from me when you use the blood, it's yours. No milah. What's milah? When I use something from the Beis Hamikdash, it's usher and I have to pay the Beis Hamikdash back. I have to give more, to give it back, plus add 25%, plus bring a carbon. Blood is yours. There's no isser. The Be'er Yishmael Tana Omakro Lechaper. So now it's within the same pasuk. I have a different way to learn it. And the Gemara is going to say, why do I need all these drushes? Here, the word lechaper. The what? I gave you the blood so that you have a kapara and not that you be over the isra me'ilah. Rabbi Yochanan Omakro, who? Here we go. All the way on the bottom. Who means the way it is. Who lifnei kapara kalach kapara. So the Gemara does an interesting thing here. The status after the kapara is known. That what? Once there's a kapara, there's no milah. So we're going to take that status and bring it to the beginning. The beginning is also going to have no milah. The Gemara is going to ask maybe the opposite. Who should say it remains the same? That the beginning status, which does have milah, will go to the end status, and the end status will have an Issa Milah. Who told you to start from the end and go to the front, go to the beginning and go to the end? The good news is that we have an easier dafim, and that's why we're able to give more shiurim now and prepare a little quicker than usual. Shkoyach Hashem. As the Gemara, maybe start from the beginning and then work your way to the end, not vice versa. Just like there's an isser to use most things before you do a kapara, so with blood also, there will be isser to use the blood to be mild to benefit from it. You'd have to pay the Beis Hamikdash before the kapara, so certain, and also after the kapara. Says Gemara, no, that doesn't make sense. There's no thing we can't think of anything in the entire Torah that once you're done performing the mitzvah that's also to use. Anything in the Beis Hamikdash, once the mitzvah is done, if you use it, you're not over. What if I could find something like that? So, well, it depends. If I find one thing in the entire Torah, then I'll learn from there to the rest of the Torah that what? It's also to use. But if it's two things, then the Torah is saying only these 2 things have an Isser and nothing else. Every morning, the first avodah was to go up with a shovel, grab some coals and bring it down into a special place next to the Mizbeach, and it would be absorbed in the ground. What if and once it was done, you went and you grabbed the coal, Asr. Even though the mitzvah was done, it's Asr. Take a look. Glowing coals. And look at it get absorbed in the ground. Boom. The nace every day. Bari Trumas Hadeshen. Says Gemara Mishum to have a Trumas Hadeshen. Ubigdi Kuhuna Shnei Ksuvim Aboim Ke'echad. Once we have 2 things that the Torah tells us that once the mitzvah is done, it's also to use, it's only those 2 things. Otherwise the Torah should have said it by 1 and I would have known to the rest of the Torah. But only these 2 things, it's also. Everything else you're allowed to use once the mitzvah is done. What's the big dikuna? So the Kohen Gadol, on Yom Kippur, when he used to wear white clothing for certain avodas. Once he's done, fold it up, put it in the gniza inside the Beis Hamikdash. Zog the Gemara, Hanich the Rabbanon Amri, V'nicham Shom Alamed Shetunim Gniza. There's a machlokes whether or not another kohen can use it. Rabbanon say another kohen can't use it. Elul Reb Doisid Hama Mutar is saying that another kohen could use his clothing for added the gniza. Mutar is in the kohen idea, but there's one stipulation: this other kohen should not use it for another Yom Kippur. Michael and Meimar. Now we're back down to one place. Only Trumas Hadeshin you can use after the Avodah. Mamela, you're going to learn to the whole Torah. You don't have two ksuvim abarim kechel. You only have one. When you have two ksuvim, you can't learn it anywhere else. One you could use, learn to the rest of the Torah. Says Gemara, Mishum to have a Trumas Hadeshin ve'egla rufa shnei ksuvim abarim kechel. We do have a second place. Now we're going to introduce to you egla rufa. Egla rufa is when we find a dead person, a body between two cities, and the skin they measure who's closer, and then they have to bring a calf and bring it into the Nachalei Son, and they chop off its head, and they say all these psukim. You're not allowed to benefit from that calf afterwards, even after the mitzvah is over. So we have Trumas Hadeshin and Egla Rufa, that's two. Shnei ksuvim abam gechad, shnei ksuvim abam gechad, ein melamdim. So we always have this. I'm going to guess 10 times, 15 times in Shas. That's good according to the Mandam. It says Milamdin, but what about Rabbi Yehuda that says Milamdin? You could learn now. What do you do? So a lot of times the Gemara has, well, there's a third pasuk. 3 psukim, and then even Rabbi Yehuda agrees that you can't Milamdin. But now the Gemara says something new. There's two words in the Torah that tell us only over here. When it comes to the Egla Harufa, it says Ha'arufa. It could have said Egla Harufa. What's the Hey Ha'arufa? And by the Trumas Hadeshin, it says instead of a sum, it says V'samai, the extra vav. So those are two miyuts that say only these two things you don't get to use afterwards. Now the Gemara goes back to that limud that we had before. And we take all 3 limudim and we put them together on one screen, so we see we learned l'chaper, we learned lochem, and we learned the who. Remember who, the way it is, the end is like the beginning. The Gemara said the beginning is like that. The beginning is like the end, but not the end like the beginning. The who. But why do you need 3 limudim? Says Gemara lemu'uti me'ila menoisar u'metuma. The lochem comes to say that blood doesn't have the isser of noisar. The tuma comes to say, I don't know who did this, but whoever did it, because I put it on the plan, I just did it one by one. Maybe Kobe, I don't know. The tuma comes to say that the lechaper comes to say that dam does not have tuma, no isser tuma, and the who comes to say that dam doesn't have mila, givaldik. All 3 things. The 4th thing, pigol, you don't need a pasuk. Why this not? That we already know, that only something that has a matter, that something comes after it, has a problem with pigol. But kmitza, levayna, dam, there's nothing after it. V'dam gufei, matter. He himself is the matter. He doesn't have a matter to him. Therefore, there's no pigol on blood. Omer Rabbi Yochanan, Shloisha krisus b'shlamim lama. Why do I need 3 separate psukim when it comes to shlamim to tell me that a person who's tamei, who eats the shlamim, the carbon, he's chayiv karas? So what are the 3 psukim? Pasuk number 1 is a very general pasuk. It says v'tumasei alav v'nichrasa. Doesn't say what carbon, but psukim chaf and chav aleph, they say shlamim v'nichrasa, shlamim v'nichrasa. So we have 3 psukim that say the word karas. What does this mean? Kol davar shahay b'klal. It's one of the shloishes from Yiddish Aturn addresses them. Kol davar shahay b'klal v'yotzman klal lo yelamen ha'atzmi yotza yelamen klal kula yotza. What in the world? It means like this. There's a generalization that said that if you eat any carbon when you are tamei, you're chayiv karas. So then why did the Torah specify shlamim? So typically speaking, that's called a klal and a prat. So the prat explains the klal. But it says Tosfos that doesn't apply over here because it's 2 different places. These psukim are in different, let's see where they are. They're in like different prokim, different chumashim maybe. Here, this one is in Vayikra Perek Chav Beis. And these guys are Vayikra Perek Zayin. So they're from Prakim. So you can't do klal prat klal from different Prakim, different psukim. So basically what we say is that it comes it doesn't explain himself. Shlom explains everything. That what? So the Gemara says what we do is achas leklal, for the general idea that all korbanos that you eat when you're tameh, when the person himself is tameh, he's chayiv kares. V'achas leprat, to say that there's certain special things that have to do with shlomim, that has to be kachim mizbeach, not the bedek habayis, let's say. And finally, the third thing is v'achas ledvarim she'enim nechalim, things like wood, levina, ketairis. These are things also that if you eat them, betuma you're chayiv. Yes, the Gemara with Reb Shimon Omar, if you can't eat wood, there's no tuma. So what does the third pasuk come to tell us? It tells that if you eat, let's say par kohen gadol, par hilam davar, that goes inside the heichal, you eat it when you're tamei, you're chayiv kares. Why would I think you're not? Because he says there's no pigul for the par hilam davar, the par yom kippur, because it goes inside the heichal. So I would think there's also no tuma there. There is in Chadash that there is Numi Reb Shimon Mechayev es Shadar Kelechol. Rashi over here on the Mishnah, if I can find it, he says, Chach Shamati Beis Midrash Rabbeinu Yaakov. V'leiner shekach Pirshu Reb Mishloim Baklois Goy B'Shas Misosoi. Numi is a lotion that he said this as he was dying. Itmar Reb Yochanan Reb Shlokish, Reb Elazar Reb Yossi Reb Chanina. So we have four man the Amrim here. Reb Shlokish and Reb Yochanan, Reb Elazar and Reb Yossi Reb Chanina. We just don't know who says what. So that's all the Gemara is saying here. It's possible Reb Yochanan said this and Reb Shlokish said that, or it's Reb Shlokish said this and Reb Yochanan said that. Same thing with Reb Elazar and Reb Yossi Reb Chanina. Chad Mahai Zuzah, B'chad Mahai Zuzah. Zuzah is a lashon of Zuga, from this pier and that pier. Chad Ram Machlokes B'tumas Basar. The machlokes between Reb Shimon and Chacham is when there's two types of tumas, right? When the meat is tamei, when the human being is tamei. So Chad Omar machlokes b'tumas basar, Abel b'tumas guf divrei hakol ein elika. He says that the machlokes is by when the meat is tamei, yeah. Abel b'tumas haguf, but if when the person is tamei and he eats the kachim, everybody will agree there's no malchus. And I don't know if it's Rabbi Yochanan says it, or maybe Reb Shlokish says it. I don't know if it's Rabbi Chanina, maybe it's Rabbi Elazar. Chacham say loika, and Reb Shimon says ein loika, or everybody agrees ein loika. There's no difference between whether the meat is tamei or the person is tamei. Machlokes in both. By taima, given the karina beiva basar sheyiga b'chol tamei. Tumasai is referring to the human being, that he himself is tamei. Tumasai Allah, it's on him. So there's a hekesh between. In other words, they're the same. The meat that's tamei and the person that's tamei is the same. Daf Yomi masnei hachi. So he says Rav Kahana masnei chad ma'zuzah v'chad ma'zuzah aseifa. They're talking about Reb Shimon. Chad omar machlokes b'tumas haguf, aber tumas basar divrei hakol loika. Chad omar machlokes b'tumas haguf. It's a little bit of the opposite. Before we said Tumas Haguf Ein Loika. According to everybody, Ein Loika. Now we're saying Tumas Basar Divrei Hakol Loika. And the other one says no, there's a machlokes. Or that there is a machlokes, my taima. Even the Lekirina Beva Tumasai Allah Benichasa, Lekirina Beva Abasa Shiga Chotami Lo Yachel. Like the reverse of what we said before. Since it's not since we can't say v'tumase olav, so we can't say ba'abasa shiga. they go together. It's true that they go together, but we go from the no. Before we're doing yes, now we're saying no. We don't have Abbas Shigab Chotame, so we also don't have, we don't have Tumasi Olav, so we don't have Abbas Shigab Chotame. Since we don't have that he himself, the person who's Tommy gets Oynish, so we don't have by the Basar. Ask the Gemara, V'amamar v'habasar. What about the word v'habasar? The rabbis eitzim levayna. So we learn from this that anything that's like it, that something that's not edible, they're not in the Isser. So now, since we already have a drasha, how can we learn from this drasha from v'habasar? The Reb Shimon holds that things that are not royal achila, you're not chayiv for achilas kodesh for the meat. You already learn it. You're already learning from the v'habasar the Rabbi says in Levina. You're already using up the v'habasar for a different drasha. So the Gemara says l'psula ba'alma. It's just an asmachta, says Rashi. It's not saying that you're chayiv malchus on eating. It's just saying it's possible. Okay, so asmachta ba'alma, says Rashi. It's not the real drasha. We're not using up the drasha for that. Okay, so now we have a very beautiful Mishnah that a lot of people, they read this Mishnah as gula. Why? Because this Mishnah teaches us the deeper understandings of kavana. We have to have kavana when we do a mitzvah. And here we have unbelievable 6 kavanas necessary for the kohen when he performs the avodah of a carbon. L'shem shisha dvarim hazevach izbach. You have to think about 6 things. First of all, l'shem zevach, what type of carbon are you bringing? Are you bringing a chatos or are you bringing a shlamim? You have to have that kavanah. L'shem zevach, is it for Reuben or is it for Shimon? L'shem Hashem, you're doing it because Hashem said you should bring a carbon. L'shem Ishem, it's for the fire. It's going to go on the fire. L'shem reach, to bring an aroma, to bring a nice fragrance. L'shem nichoyach, to please Hashem. And v'chatas, v'asham, when you bring a carbon for forgiveness, for kapara, then you have to say l'shem ched. You have to, whatever it was. I spoke l'shem hara, here's the carbon. L'shem Shabbos, here's the carbon. L'shem hara I was joking about. I don't know if you're bringing chatas for that. Says Rabbi Yossi, I know what you're thinking. It's too hard to think the perfect kavanah, 6 kavanas. Even if you don't think them, you're also going to. Why? Kosher, shutnai bezin, because bezin gets involved over here, and bezin says that this is the kavanas that you're using. Because at the end of the day, bezin is in charge of the kavanas, and whatever the bezin decide, that's what it will be. And the kohen doing the avodah, it'll work for him the way the bezin wants it to work. Omer Rav Yehuda Rav. So now the Gemara brings a pasuk where Rav Yehuda learned 5 out of these 6 limudim. It says in the pasuk, "Bekir bo yichrov yirchatz b'mayim," all the way in the beginning of Vayikra, "V'hiktar hakohenes hakoyel mizbecha, oyla ishe reach nichoyach l'Hashem." Each word is a drasha. Oyla l'shem oyla. You have to have kavanah that's for an oyla la'pukei l'shem shlamim. Do not think that it's a shlamim. Deloy, that won't work. Ishe, meaning a fire, l'shem ishem, that you're going to have kavanah, you put on the fire. Interesting kavanah that you need to have. La'pukei kevava deloy. Don't think that you're making it, you're broiling it. Today, the word comes from here, kish kebab. Kebab in Eretz Yisrael it's called. And it's from this word of a piece of meat that's roasted. Reach, l'shem reach. You have to have in mind that you're going to give a fragrance to Takash Baruch. La'pukei eivarim shetzlam v'helan. And this comes to exclude limbs that you're already roasted and you put it on the mizbeach. Dom Rabbi Dom Rav, eivarim shetzlam v'helan ein bohen mishum reach. You're not yoy to the reach because you already, that initial, when you put the steak on the grill in the beginning, it goes pss, and all that smoke comes up. That's a one-time thing. Once you do that, it's over. That's what you need to put on the mizbeach. Nichoyach l'shem hanochas ruach, to give to please the Rebbeinu Shalom. There's the why and there's the who. The who is for Hashem. Why? To give him nachas ruach, so to speak. Hashem l'shem mishu omar b'hoy aylo. You're doing it because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for the one who said b'hoy aylo. Omer Rav Yud Omer Rav, chatas shchata l'shem aylo psula, l'shem chulin kshera. Says Rav, if you take a chatas, you know this is a chatas, somebody designated a chatas, and you say this is not a chatas, this is an aylo. That's the first mission in Zevachim, hustle. But what if this is a chiddush gadol? You say this is not a chatos. This is a steak from my house. It is a good carbon. The shem chulin kshera. Or Rabbi Lazar, my time of the Rav, where did he get it from? Because it says v'lo yichalu shem es kachem b'nei Yisrael. Kachem v'chalim kachem. When you're in the same category, one carbon could ruin another carbon, but chulin, regular steaks, cannot ruin a carbon. Does the guy get a kapara? We have to see. Kachem v'chalim kachem, chulin v'chalim kachem. Basav Rabbi Omer Rabbi Yosi, af mi shaloi hoya b'liba l'shem echad mikolelu kosher. Shutnai bezin. What does it say in the Mishnah? Rabbi Yosi says you don't have to have any kavana because bezin has the kavana for you. It's mashma because it was parav. Your brain wasn't thinking about anything. What if you had, how do you say in English? You have an opposing thought. Instead of having zero thought, okay, listen, a guy died in Shemona Esrei. Let's say a guy has a bad example, what I'm thinking now. A guy died in Shemona Esrei with zero thought. Zero. He's thinking. He has no idea what he's saying. But I could understand if somebody has a bad thought in Shemona Esrei, he's thinking, he's doubting Shemona Esrei to Getchka. Of course it's going to ruin the Shemona Esrei because it's a negative, it's an opposing thought. So over here also, Rabbi Yosi says that it's okay when he has zero thought. It's a parav. Zero thought, okay, it doesn't ruin it. But if you have an opposing thought, you're thinking that it's chulin, of course it should ruin it. Why shouldn't it ruin it? Should be possible. I buy a great deal, but the deal is going to be a little different. Where Raisi is saying if there's zero other thought, then it's a perfect carbon. Not only that, you don't have to bring another carbon. You didn't have the right kavana. Bezin had kavana for you. It's a good carbon. Go home. Be okay. You're yoytzi Shemona Esrei, so to speak. But you can be medayik that if you had an opposing thought, kosher ve'enei meratza. It's kosher, meaning you don't have to throw it out. Like if you had a thought when you're making a chatas, you had a thought that it's oily, you have to throw out the chatas. But over here, you don't have to throw it out. But you have to bring another one. You don't get the person that brought the carbon doesn't get a ritzui. Boisai. Have a wonderful day, Mark. Wow, it's unbelievable.
Merit the schus of spreading Torah throughout the world. Sponsor a shir today. MDYsponsor.com or sponsor at MDYDaf.com.